Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today is day 4 of Business Continuity and Awareness Week, presented by BCI, of which my guest and I today have decided to contribute to that week. And today, I'd like to welcome back Jason Haas, and we're going to talk about employee engagement. Jason, welcome back.
Thanks, Alex. It seems like it's been forever since we've chatted. And again, thank you so much for this great opportunity to dive into what I believe are some of the most critical things in business resilience.
Yeah, there were so many things we could talk about, and I know we narrowed it down to a couple of topics. Uh, our first day and second day, actually, we're all on personal resilience. We talked about community resilience yesterday, and today we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned, employee engagement. So why don't you kick things off with that?
Sure. In thinking about employee engagement, and one of the questions is like, how can culture impact an organization's ability to thrive or dive during adverse experiences? So the way I look at that is, how do you get your team members to show up in those sucky situations, to just kind of lean into it, embrace it, and work through it? Well, that's done by having a really robust culture. What does that mean? It means that you have leaders, not bosses. So people who have that servitude type leadership style, leaders that are there to remove roadblocks and to support the team member in their ambitions and developments, not to dictate a list of things that must get done. And to qualify that, of course, there's a list of things that always must be done. But if that's how you're being managed, that might not necessarily be the most positive experience that you have with your leader or boss. And a lot of times you'll hear me use those terms because I have two different meanings behind that. Again, that leader is the one who helps me as maybe a line level employee or team member thrive in the organization, to remove those roadblocks, to encourage me to take calculated and acceptable risks, to support me in my epic failures, and to learn and grow and thrive from that. Whereas a boss, well, those are the ones who like to micromanage you, to say,
Yeah,
you
well,
showed up 10 minutes late today, or you took a little extra long lunch, or, all those other more micro type management, not necessarily warm, fuzzy type feeling things. So having a robust, supportive culture has a better opportunity of getting that team member to show up during those adverse times than a volatile and cesspool type culture where you don't feel connected to the organization, you don't believe in its mission, and you sure are not going to follow your boss into those trenches of adverse events. So, having that makes a difference. What do you think makes a good culture?
one, empowering your employees, not doing the micromanagement that you mentioned, because I want to add a point to that. When there are adverse situations, if you are a micromanager and you have to have your finger in every single thing that's going on, every decision, when something happens, they're going to defer to you. And it doesn't matter what position they play in disaster response or crisis management, whatever you want to call it. They're not going to do a single thing until you step up, because you've micromanaged them the entire way, every single day. Now that something happened, they're looking at you because they don't feel empowered. They don't feel they could actually, they may have the role and responsibility, but they don't feel they can actually do it because you've never allowed them to do it. And
Right.
that's going to
And
hinder you.
yeah, and kind of a story to back this up. It's not necessarily a thing of resilience, but how a supportive, nurtured culture can enable a great customer experience. And considering adverse expense or events and things like that, still having that exemplary customer experience is absolutely critical. To me, that's one of the keys to success of thriving during adversity, is your customers don't realize it, or they accept it and support you in that. So I did business with Zappos years ago. At that time, I had a puppy. I bought a pair of Sorels, which are like leather-topped, expensive winter boots that are awesome. My puppy decided to have a taste for leather and decided to consume the leather uppers of the left boot. Uh, Being as expensive as they are, and me just being mortified at the realization, I reached out to Zappos, seeing if they'd sell me a left boot. The customer service agent kind of laughed around that and inquired to the why. And I told the story. And she had been empowered by their organization to make these types of decisions, where she wants to invest in that customer experience and provide that exemplary experience, that she had the ability to do so. So after I asked her if I could buy a single left boot, she, informed me that unfortunately she cannot because they're sold in pairs, so on and so forth. But what she can do is send me a brand new pair of boots at no additional charge to me, because the story was so meaningful and impactful to her that she was empowered to make that decision to support me for an issue that I own, that I cause, is no part of Zappos whatsoever. But reaching out and having an exemplary customer experience by having that organization empower that team member to make decisions on behalf of the organization, they earned a customer for life. I buy the vast majority of my shoes from Zappos and have for the last decade or so, based on that single experience. So think about that during your adverse times. How can your culture and your organization support you in making decisions quickly without getting into analysis paralysis, running it up the leadership tree, getting everyone and their mothers buy-in on stuff? At that point, the event's over, the impact's experienced, and the reputation's trashed. So why don't we empower our people to act in the best interest of the organization by supporting them?
Yeah, and like I was saying, if you're not empowered during non-adverse times or business as usual times, if you're not empowered then, how are you suddenly empowered when a disaster strikes? They're not going to gather and determine what they need to do. They're going to wait for you. And then what's going to happen if you're the leader who's never empowered these people? You're going to get frustrated because all of a sudden everything falls on your shoulder. But you haven't realized the fact it has fallen on your shoulder is because you made it fall on your shoulder. You didn't empower people to make decisions, to take the lead when they needed to in their specific area when something occurs. And yes, there may be parameters. Nobody talks to the media. You guys go rebuild your servers or the mainframe or whatever you're doing, but don't talk to the media. That one is going to stay with me. Okay, that's fine. You've at least got some parameters for people to know that they can go forward and start things before you get involved, before you even have to make the first decision. You've already empowered your people to do things, and they will do
I
it.
Right. I couldn't agree more. It's like we set out a roadmap to success instead of those punitive measures as you step on those business landmines, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, and part of thinking of culture too, it's also having work-life balance. Maybe, in-person, hybrid, remote work options. We're not going to peel that onion today. That's a whole different podcast talking
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
But
I've
those are
got thoughts
things
on that too.
that can, yeah, I think we all do. But those are different ways that you can, nurture a culture like that too. Or thinking about my current organization, a couple of things that they get right really well is events outside of the organization to create a sense of belonging and, team building, where we might do a risky event like whitewater rafting, or maybe we're bowling or doing these other type of events together outside of work. So we get to know each other a little bit more, create those critical bonds, share information about ourselves, and just get overall more connected. I find when I'm more connected with an individual or organization, I'm willing to go above and beyond, compared to if I'm feeling just like another team member, or I'm just here for a paycheck, or other negative type of thoughts around how I relate to the business. I'm less likely to lean into the suck, so to speak, and embrace that chaos. So, there's things, work-life balance, proper PTO, being paid a fair market rate, being careful with other duties as assigned, and things like that, scope creep. There's a balance to all this to nurturing the team member and the culture. What other things do you think might be important in this?
Well, I just want to build on what you were saying. An organization's best promotional tool is its employees. If an employee is not happy, it's going to show through your interaction with Zappos, years ago. If that employee was not happy, she wouldn't have done anything for you. She wouldn't have cared less. Well, too bad. You know, so what? But if I'm happy with my company, I'm going to tell other people I love where I work. Hey, we do things. We do take a day off and everyone volunteers, or a lot of companies do that. A certain day of the year, all employees have to go off and do your volunteer work to give back to the community. So that they're your biggest promotional tool. And if they're not happy and they don't feel empowered, it doesn't matter what kind of billboard you have or social media messages you're sending out. Your employees aren't promoting it, so it's going off into dead air. No one's there to back you up. Oh yeah, I saw your company's promotion the other day. Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it? Just by those words right there, I'm promoting the company, saying that I'm happy with it. Yeah, so
Right.
what? Then am I doing that? That's telling you right off the bat what could happen when there is an adverse situation. They're not resilient. They don't focus on their people because they're not bringing anyone together. No one's engaged. No one is being brought together as a team. There is no network. It's just a paycheck for everyone. And that is usually the focus of leadership. We just want those numbers to go up. That's all. We don't care about the rest.
Right. And those things are to, take into strong consideration because this is also one way to lose your control of the narrative during some sort of impact or crisis. If your team members aren't happy, they're more likely to ignore those policies and how they engage with external sources, ignoring that communications plan and those areas of authority. They're more likely to post i.e., anonymously on social media
Yeah.
or job boards, trashing their employer or former employer, whatever it may be, and things like that. So think about that as you nurture culture and whatnot. Again, it reminds me of when I got married. My dad, said to me, happy wife, happy life.
Mhm.
And, to a point in thinking about an organization, uh, happy culture is a robust culture, whereas maybe a negative culture is one of higher risk, where again, how are they going to show up for you in those adverse times? Who's going to show up? And I think that a lot of around DR events and on call and all those, when I got to pick up that phone and call that stakeholder at 3 a.m., part of that solution is hopes and prayers that they will pick up that phone, but also relying on my organization that they've done the right things to support that team member so they can feel empowered when they show up for me, if they show up for me.
Yeah, and then you also know too, if my employer is calling me at 2 in the morning and they've allowed me all this other leeway, they treat me with all this respect, I am empowered. If they're calling me at 2 in the morning, I know they really need me. So you don't feel guilty about helping them. It's, yeah, I want to help you. You've done this
Right.
so much for me, then I want to step and go above to help you because I know and I understand what the impacts are to our vendors or our customers and to the organization and my work colleagues. So I know that I'm
Agreed.
needed.
Yeah, it's that sense of belonging and sense of purpose. I was initially thinking, oh, that sense of family, but it's work. It's not family. These are not your children, your wives, your relatives, and all of those. Those relationships are very, very different from your work-based relationships.
Yeah.
So the two are not the same. And, so yeah, it's again that sense of belonging, that sense of purpose, that sense of commitment of when the organization invests in the person, that person in return invests usually much more than the organization invested in them. I know when I'm properly supported, developed, and compensated, I will go to the ends of the world to support that organization. I had a former leader who was so impactful in my life that I would follow him anywhere for anything. If he's like, Jason, I need a sandwich. I know I'm busy, you're busy, but if you could help me do that, without a doubt, he wouldn't even have to ask, and I wouldn't even ask him for money. I believed in him so much. I felt so connected to him that I would do anything to enable his success, knowing in return he would do the exact same for me. And he had. He had proved it every single day he showed up.
Well, we're coming to the end of our first segment, talking about organizational culture here for employee engagement. We've got 2 minutes left. Any final thoughts on that before we go to our next bit?
Yeah, take a look at your own culture. What do you think it is? Do you feel like you belong? Do you feel like you're supported? How do you feel about your organization? Do you know how your organization feels about you? What are they doing to enable you in both the blue sky conditions and dark sky conditions? Think about that and see where you can lean in and ask the employer to do more or where the employer may engage you to step it up.
Yeah. Do you really care about me as a
Right,
person, not just an employee?
right. It's not just a transaction. It's a little
Yeah.
bit more than that.
Yeah. And I think unfortunately a lot of some managers and leaders kind of consider, well, if you're working for us, that's all you are as an employee.
Right.
No, it's just like them too. They managers and CEOs, they've all got people they report to as well. How do they feel? Do they want to feel respected? Do they want to feel empowered? Do they want to feel as though they are people as well? Yeah, they do.
Right.
Guess what? People without managerial titles want the same thing.
Right. It's the human condition, and that's the most important thing. Processes, policies, and whatnot are kind of cold and literal. At the end of the day, we're all people trying to accomplish a similar goal. How do we support that?
Yeah. And on that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. We're talking once again with Jason Haas today about employee engagement, and we will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.